रिसेंटली विदेश मंत्री डॉक्टर एस जयशंकर साहब एक वक्तव्य दे रहे थे कार्यक्रम में। वहां पर उन्होंने बताया कि कैसे पाकिस्तान नीति पर श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी और नेहरू जी के बीच में मतभेद था, और नेहरू जी और सरदार पटेल के बीच में कैसे चाइना की पॉलिसी को लेकर मतभेद था, और कैसे आर अम्बेडकर साहब ने कैबिनेट छोड़ दी थी डोमेस्टिक इशू और फॉरेन पॉलिसी जो यूएस और इंडिया की थी उसकी पॉलिसी को लेकर के। तो हम चाहते हैं कि आप इस वीडियो को पूरा देखें। यहाँ पर आपने बताया है कैसे मतभेद था पीटी नेहरू जी में और अन्य नेताओं में।
They were the best choices. I mean, these are choices made. We cannot undo those choices. But there are lessons learned from the dissection of these choices. But more than choices, I would even say policies. You know, for us, if we are to really look today at Indian foreign policy, a lot of it should also be on the roads not taken. That if one were to look today at someone like Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee, I mean, it's interesting. The critics of Indian foreign policy often were real-time critics. This is not a case of looking back after 20, 30 years and saying you got the decision right because I have the benefit of 20 years of events thereafter. At that time, when events were happening, there were people who put alternatives on the table. If you look, for example, at our Pakistan policy, at the Nehru-Liaquat Pact, and subsequently, and frankly, at our handling of Kashmir, you have actually a minister of the first cabinet who leaves the government because he has profound differences on the entirety of the Pakistan policy, and that's Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee, and who actually at that time cautions Nehru about going to the UN on Kashmir. A second case is Sardar Patel himself. You know, there is this very famous exchange of views he has had with Pandit Nehru on China, that where he has given a strategic assessment of China, and Nehru, in a way, doesn't respond directly to him, but he does respond, who puts an alternative strategic assessment. So, now, come 1962, many people would have said, oh, maybe Patel got it better. But Patel wrote this not in 1962, he wrote it in 1950. So, it was not that the options and the thought processes were not there. Oh, today when I was looking at that film before we came in, and I thought of, the center dedicated to Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar actually has spoken at some length and written at some length about the reasons, when he quit the cabinet as well. A lot of them had to do with domestic policy. But interestingly, one of them had to do with foreign policy, which is he differed profoundly with the way in which the government of the day was handling the United States. That he felt that we were unnecessarily getting into problems with the United States, actually by taking up the cause of China. So we were putting, this is not exactly the phrase he uses, but essentially he implies that we are putting China's interests ahead of India's interests when it comes to dealing with the United States. Or even if one looks at non-alignment, that non-alignment was meant as a statement of independence and a way of creating our space. But the fact is that at some stage, it became like being at the center for the sake of being at the center. That itself became the end objective. So when our national interests sometimes warranted leaning on one side or cutting a deal, we were hesitant to do so. So the tactics, in a sense, became strategy, and that clouded our vision. So I mention all this to you because, to my mind, if we are today to proceed with Indian strategic thought, if we are to assess international relations and view it from our own viewpoint, it is necessary, first of all, that we ourselves be less theological and less dogmatic and, frankly, less laudatory about our own record. That we need to examine our own record with a much more critical eye. And I say this because to me, the last of these causes why we, in a sense, we are prisoners of a larger construct which we do not control. Today is not just hegemonism, not just modernism, not just politics of the day, not the subjectivism that I spoke about. It is actually globalism. That in a globalized world, the nature of the world today is such that the pressure for political correctness, for deciding what is right, what is wrong, for painting political forces, governments, people as outliers, while suggesting this is the norm, and this is the norm that the world has agreed upon, and if you disagree with me, you are the outlier, you cannot possibly be right, because as the custodian of globalism, there is one truth, I am the custodian of that truth, and it is a very, very clever way today of legitimizing and delegitimizing debaters. So this, I thought, were some considerations regarding our own record in foreign policy. Now, I had mentioned epics. And again, many of you would be familiar. There is a